Hello everyone, how are you all doing? Well, what a day it's been, huh? So the state funeral has now concluded, and Her Majesty has been transported by hearse from Westminster Abbey, past Parliament Square, up the Mall towards Buckingham Palace. She travelled through London before finally making the 25-mile journey up to Windsor Castle, where after the committal service she was lowered into the royal vault before finally being laid to rest in a private family burial, forever reunited with her father King George VI, the Queen Mother, her sister Princess Margaret, and her husband Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. Some of you will have got up early to watch the funeral, and some of you may have stayed up all night, depending on where you live around the world. If you've been one of those people, I thank you, and I do hope you manage to get some rest soon. As expected, the funeral service and procession was outstandingly beautiful and profound, and exceptionally well executed, with over 3,000 military personnel involved, including representatives from the Royal Navy, the Royal Air Force, and His Majesty's Army. Every single person involved in the funeral, be they young or old, male or female, black or white, all came together to give the Queen a truly magnificent and dignified farewell. Special recognition should be given to the 8 young soldiers who acted as the Queen's pallbearers throughout today. What an absolute honour to have been bestowed upon them, and believe me, that would have been no easy task to carry the Sovereign's coffin with the eyes of the world firmly fixed upon you. The coffin, by the way, is lead-lined, so it would have been exceptionally heavy, and that's why there were 8 pallbearers instead of the traditional 6. They were absolutely exemplary and performed their duties magnificently and so diligently with the utmost humbleness and respect, and if I was their mother I would be so incredibly proud. I must also at this point praise young Prince George and Princess Charlotte for being so incredibly well behaved. Obviously, Louis was not in attendance. We all saw at the Jubilee how much of a lively, cheeky chappy he is. He's still very young, and today has been a long, solemn day, so the Prince and Princess of Wales wisely decided that Louis should remain at home. People came out today in their millions, literally millions, to line the streets and parks of London, and especially on the long mile to Windsor Castle. People all wanting to pay their respects, say their final goodbyes, and to witness this incredible piece of history. Never again in our lifetime will the UK and Commonwealth have a Queen as our reigning monarch. It was heartbreaking, yet also heartwarming to see the Queen's beloved Black Highland pony Emma waiting along the long mile at Windsor for the funeral procession and hearse to pass by, and 2 of the Queen's corgis, Sandy and Mick, were also waiting near the entrance to Windsor Castle. The committal service at St George's Chapel was incredibly moving. King Charles was teary-eyed, but remained remarkably strong and composed, as did the rest of the family. I've been surprisingly composed throughout the day as well, but I have to admit that as soon as they removed the imperial crown, the orb, and the sceptre from the coffin and handed it back, I started to crack. As soon as the Queen's coffin started to be lowered into the royal vault, and her titles were read out, I completely broke down. But the lone piper walking off completely finished me off. It was so hauntingly beautiful as the music faded into the background and Charles was recognised and honoured as our king. It's interesting to note that at that point the Sharkles did sing God Save the King, but I'll talk about that in a moment. So now, as the UK attempts to settle back into some sort of normality and adapt to the reign of King Charles III, I have a question for you all. What's the difference between one of those creepy plastic dolls that cry when you make it and Meghan Markle? In my opinion, absolutely nothing. We all knew that the Dutch arse of fakery and fuckery would try and pull some sort of stunt today to bring the focus back onto herself, and she didn't disappoint. I suppose it was too much really for us to hope that the day would pass without something going on. Thankfully, TV and media coverage didn't focus too heavily on her, yet there were a couple of occasions that I'm going to talk about. At the end of the funeral service, everyone sang the British national anthem, God Save the King. Everyone, that is, except Henry and Rachel from overseas. The two orange arsewipes delivered their final parting shot to Her Majesty the Queen, their final act of defiance, utter contempt and disrespect to both the Queen and to Charles, in fact. Ragland, the poor wee lamb, I totally expected to struggle, as after all, she had no one to help her learn the words to God Save the Queen, so how the hell would she cope with the words changing to God Save the King? But Harry, that's disappointing. Even his 9-year-old nephew and 7-year-old niece had more decorum, and they were singing the national anthem to honour their grandfather. Hasnoballs has now laid bare to the whole world what an utterly contemptible, disrespectful, petulant little child he really is. He's made it very clear where his loyalty lies, and the sooner the ginger ball ache and that walking, talking vagina of his leaves our great shores of Blighty, the better. The one occasion that did, however, provide a little bit of needed laughter today was the huge candle, who I shall forever name Saint Candle of Westminster. Many of the broadcasted TV shots had a huge candle perfectly obscuring Rachel Ragland's face. Well, the part of her face that you could see, anyway, underneath that ridiculous flying saucer of a hat of hers, chosen to match her witch's cape and long gloves. Within minutes of the image of the candle blocking Markle's bronzed turkey neck, there were calls on Twitter for the candle to be given an honorary knighthood, or at least something in the King's New Year's honours list. It would be absolutely hysterical if that actually happened, and if any of you notice a petition to make it so, please tag me, as I will be one of the first to support it. Personally, and yes, I really am this petty, this is a petty hill I am willing to die on. Although it's probably a complete coincidence, I would love to think that Markle was perfectly and rather deliberately placed where she was, so that the candle would obscure her face. And I would really love to think that it was Her Majesty's final parting gift to Meghan Markle, her granddaughter-in-law, who made the Queen's final years so stressful and miserable. Parting shots fired. Pew pew! Some of you may have missed it, but even the Archbishop of Canterbury managed to get a sly little dig in at the couple when he performed a reading and stated that Her Majesty will be remembered long after all those who seek fame and privileges are forgotten. Is that his payback for Markle's lies when she stated they married 3 days before the official ceremony, perhaps, and the Archbishop had to come out on public record and say it wasn't so? Pew pew! Shots fired! I saw this picture in The Sun online, depicting a very emotional Rachel Raggers waiting for the Queen's hearse to pass, with a solitary tear trickling down her face. She's got a bloody nerve, after all she has done and continues to do. The audacity, I'm telling you, the audacity! But was she actually crying, though? She's admitted herself on many occasions that one of her special skills as an actress, and probably the only skill actually, was to be able to make herself cry within 3 seconds on command. She's obviously spotted a camera trained on her and took the opportunity for a bit of face self-promotion. Trying to think of the right words. So, let us not forget that she is in desperate need of publicity right now. Her reputation is in total tatters with the royals, with the British public, within the Commonwealth, in America and beyond. The Oprah interview blew up in her face. The Cut interview backfired. Netflix no longer wished to work with her, and she's just barely clinging on to her Spotify deal, and her final chance to get that hallowed shot of the Queen with Lily has now gone forever. If reports are to be believed, she is up to her fake tiara in debt, and sunshiny ball sacks have now told her and Henry to take a long, brisk walk. So she needed some way of turning it round for herself, hence the picture of her crying, clearly showing her compassion in action. What utter bollocks! If you look at this picture carefully, focus in on her hand. Do you see that beige mark on her finger? That's where she wiped that one lonely tear away. The toxic tear, clearly wiping off the 50 layers of bronzer with it. She didn't have any tissues with her, obviously, as she probably wasn't genuinely in the least bit upset, so she had to use her glove. Classy. So hopefully tomorrow, or as soon as is humanly possible, Hairless and Smeg will bugger off back to Monty Shitshow and won't darken our shores again for a very long time. In the coming week or two, it is expected that King Charles will address the issue of what titles, if any, will be given to Archibald and Piccalilli. You just know that there is most likely going to be an unstoppable barrage of puff PR coming our way, and they will do all they can to stay in the media. So be aware and buckle up, because it's only going to get bumpier from here on in. But as long as we have St. Candle of Westminster, St. Janet of Manchester, the lady in blue that snubbed Markle on the walkabout this week, and Major Johnny Thompson in our corner, we'll do just fine. In all seriousness, the Queen has now gone, but she will never be forgotten. For over 70 years, right up until her death, she served her people and the Commonwealth with humility and grace, just as she promised she would on her 21st birthday. And never was a person more true to their word. The one true Lilibet will now forever rest with Philip, her strength and stay. She's gone from our sight, but never from our hearts. Good night, Your Majesty. God bless, and thank you for everything.